joining us for preparing for the DAT OAT exam. My name is Stephanie Soto. I'm the Assistant Director in the Tutoring and Testing Center. Today I have with me Jessie. Jessie, could you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie. I'm on the pre-optometry track. I'm currently a senior and going to graduate later at May of this semester. And I had taken the OAT, last year in March and in July. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And Jessie's going to share a little bit about how she prepared for the exam, what test day was like. So if you have any questions, you can add it to the chat at any point, or wait at the end of the presentation. We'll open up for just general questions. So for today, I'm just going to give a brief overview of each of the exams, and you'll see why they're put together. And then we're going to talk about study tips and resources, and then what to expect test day. So the DAT and OAT are created by the same company, so that's why they align so much. So they actually share three of the same sections: the Survey of Natural Sciences, the Reading Comprehension, and the Quantitative Reasoning. The exam in whole is over 5 hours, so it is quite a lengthy exam. The DAT for 2022 is $510, and the OAT is $505. So it is a costly exam. So it's one that you want to save up for, study for, and be prepared for, because if you decide to reschedule your exam, there's additional costs with all of those as well. And then you'll take your exam at a Prometric testing center. And if you take it more than once, there is a waiting period between attempts, at least 90 days. We're going to go into an exam breakdown and talk about each of the individual sections, as well as how Jessie prepared for those individually. So the first one is the Survey of Natural Sciences. So this will be your biology, your chemistry, and your inorganic and organic. So the biology has 40 questions, chemistry 30 and 30. It's 90 minutes for this section, which is less than a minute per question to answer the 100 multiple choice questions. So for this section, Jessie, can you talk about just your experience going into it? Was it what you expected? And how did you prepare for this section?
Yeah, so this section I was pretty confident in, just because I had a very good background in, like, solid foundation in biology. I still remember a lot of stuff from my previous class. Organic chemistry was the same way for me. I had a very good professor for that class, so I didn't focus too much on those. Organic chemistry was a lot of memorization of the basic reactions, not really going in depth of the general mechanism of the different reactions. For organic chemistry, it was more of just know what kind of reactions there are, at least in my experience. General chemistry I was a little bit more lacking in, and there was a lot of stuff that I saw about gases and stuff, but general chemistry was the one that I focused more on, and I'll talk a lot about it too, that my study habits was I just looked at a chapter inside of this Kaplan book and just went through a chapter of it, pretty much a week of going through that chapter, reading through it, just refreshing on my memory and going through review questions at the end. And each week I just repeated that process of looking at just a chapter in that book. And general chemistry, I was just going through that section of the book, since I was really bad at it. But overall, I didn't feel too bad about this section. And on the OAT, I could go back and forth between the sections. So once I completed all the 100 questions and I needed to go back to biology, and I would just finish the organic chemistry section, I could go back to that. So this 90 minutes, you can have the time, the time, and you're able to go back and forth between the biology, general chemistry, and organic chemistry sections.
Is there a way to mark your question?
Yes, there is. So you can mark your whichever ones that you're feeling unconfident on. There's a little button on the exam software that you can mark a question, and when you're when you need to look at all the questions that you had marked to look back on, there is a section. There is a little thing on the screen to say or to show you all the questions that you need to go over or you had marked, so then it's easier for you to look back on and just go through just the ones that you've marked.
All right, perfect, thank you. All right, so the reading comprehension question or section, it's 60 minutes to do 3 different passages. So each has between 16 to 17 questions for a total of 50 questions. So a lot of this is timing, right? So how did you prepare for this section, and how did you kind of work on your timing for those questions?
Yeah, so I basically just split the 60 minutes into, so I would just look at the time and make sure I allotted 20 minutes per reading passage, since there's only 3 passages. And then there's just the questions. They're pretty much in order, and how I went through it was I am the kind of person that I just skim through the passage, and then as I go through the questions, I just take a look at the passage and then kind of make my judgment from there. When I was studying it, I felt pretty confident in it as well. This section I did pretty well on. And again, this section, I feel like it was more of, as long as you take a look at the passage, the answers are always in there. It's not very, it's not too like in depth, like you don't have to do much analysis. The answer will be in the passage. And it's just testing to make sure that you are able to grasp the information in there and just be able to report that knowledge back into the question, whatever it's asking you. So it's not, or at least I didn't find it not too bad. Just some reading, go through it, go back and forth between the question, and then just look at the passage. And there is a little, what is it called? There's a highlighter ability. So on the software, as you're going through the passage, you can highlight a certain sentence or whatever in the passage. So you can kind of look back at it and look at the question, kind of utilize your time a little bit better. So.
I know one question we get a lot for this section is, do you look at the questions or the passage first? So Jesse, what did you do? How did you kind of tackle that?
I looked at the passage first, just so I could get an idea of what kind of questions I should expect and what kind of general, like, what kind of passage am I looking at? Is it like an argumentative, or is it trying to just be informative to the reader? So it kind of aligns me to what kind of questions I should expect after skimming through the passage, and not go into questions head first, because I tend to be the kind of person where if I look at the questions first, I get a little bit confused and make assumptions or something. I get a little bit confused that, oh, this passage is trying to argue some certain opinion when naturally it's not. So it helps a lot for me to just skim through the passage first and just get an idea of where am I going with this part of this test, and just be able to go from there. So.
All right, the next section that we're going to talk about is the math, the quantitative reasoning. It's 45 minutes to answer 40 questions And you do get a basic 4-function calculator on the computer screen during this section. So Jesse, what resources did you use to prepare for this section? Did you just do a lot of practice questions, or were there other apps or websites that you used?
Yeah, so this part I used a lot of just practice questions. Luckily, it was just a lot of algebra and stats analysis, as Stephanie mentioned. Thankfully, no calculus, so there's that. Where I got the practice questions from. So I used this source called the DAT Bootcamp. I know I was prepping for the OAT, but as you seen going through this PowerPoint, the DAT and OAT are very similar. The quantitative reasoning, the algebra, and quantitative reasoning questions are very similar on both sections, or both tests. So the DAT Bootcamp had this this thing called the question of the day. They gave you, or not question of the day, they gave you like a warm-up of 5 questions, each question pertaining to a different section of the test. So the perceptive ability part, which I didn't need, but for dental you do need, biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and then quantitative reasoning. So it was just this short little question. I just used that warm up from DAT Bootcamp to just do a little bit of practice of those prior sections that we just talked about, but this was my only way of testing my quantitative reasoning. Personally, I felt pretty confident in this as well, especially because it was algebra, but if for the stats part, there was a little bit of stuff that I didn't really feel too strongly on. I just referred to my Kaplan practice book to study for that part.
All right, so those 3 sections are the same in both the DAT and the OAT, and here's where it starts to differ. So the perceptual ability test is unique to only the DAT exam, and it's really designed so that you can interpret 2-dimensional representations of 3D objects. So kind of what you'll do in the field with x-rays, with casts, with fillings. But they do it in a way that's almost like gaming. So there's different sub-tests within it. So you might have paper folding, you have cube counting. A lot of the prep for this section that's recommended is just practice questions. The more practice you can do, the more comfortable you'll be when you see these images on the screen. It is 60 minutes to answer a total of 90 questions, so it is quite a lot. So just practice every day. If you just do a few of each of the 6 subtests, you'll be more familiar come test day. The next section is specific to the OAT because when you go to optometry school, it's full of optics. So you have to have a good basis of physics. So for this physics section, Jesse, how did you prepare and what resources did you use?
Yes, so this one I can talk quite a lot on because physics was my weakest suit, which was, and physics is very important because optometrists, we do have to deal with optics a lot. So what I did a lot, so I focused a lot on just going through chapters in my practice book and going over the review questions. At the end of the chapter, I try to talk to my friends and my family because my parents were very good at physics, and I had a couple of friends too that I could talk to and kind of go back and forth about how to solve this question, what's the fastest way or ways to think of it in order to kind of remember it on the exam. And and it really helps to draw diagrams, physics, because it is a lot of motion, just being able to understand how like things work between different objects. Diagrams help. It really helped me when doing the questions just to draw out what the question was talking about for the kinematics and the optics parts as well. Let's see. And the optics, there was a lot of optics, at least for the 2 attempts that I took the OAT. I focused mainly on that when studying it for before taking it the second time. Just going through optics a lot, going through a lot of practice questions, and just being able to utilize friends, family, just going back and forth between them about those questions. So, yeah. And also, I learned about this later after I took it, but there is a boot camp for the OAT, and when I looked over it, just to like see how good of a resource it is for the Optometry Club, the OAT boot camp does have practice questions and a warm up for just going through physics questions and all those different good stuff. So I would have definitely wanted to use that for prepping for my OAT. So yeah.
Great. Is that the same company that does the DAT bootcamp?
I believe so. Yeah, the format's very similar, so I'm pretty sure it is. But both DAT bootcamp is very helpful and it's very thorough. Even though I wasn't DAT, it really helped on my other sections. But OAT bootcamp is probably made by the same people and is also has warm-ups and other resources to use, both free and premium for both of them.
Awesome. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to go about creating a study plan and some study tips that we have to prepare for your exam. So the first one is to actually create a study schedule. So block out time on a weekly schedule where you will devote time to practice for your exam. So you can do a little bit every day, but you should have blocks of time when you can really go through your study guide or look up videos online and really like delve into the material, as well as doing practice questions or practice exams. So Jesse, how did you kind of fit this into your schedule? Because I know you're a student and you're involved on campus. So how did you fit your studies into your schedule?
Yeah, so when I was studying for the OAT, so the first attempt that I was studying for, that was in March, and everything was still pretty much online. Basically, what I did was during breaks in between my class, I would just try to tell my family who was still doing stuff at home, just telling them I'm going to be studying, just keep the volume down, and I would try to put away all my electronics like phones, stuff like that, just to create this really focused environment for me to study and just put all my concentration into studying for the OAT. Personally, I'm not very good at creating like a solid, rigid schedule to study. Honestly, it really depends on some people if creating a schedule is the way for you to study best. It involves you knowing how your study habits are. How do you study best? Can you study better with friends, or do you study better alone? For me, I study best when I'm mostly alone and just keeping myself in a quiet environment. When I find myself time, I just make a quiet environment, sit myself down, and just go through my just general, going through a chapter in my practice book, and yeah.
So two really good points. One is communication. So if you do have roommates or you're living at home, make sure that you're communicating that this is your study time and you need it quiet if you need it quiet when you're studying, or you need time when you won't be interrupted, which is key. And then putting everything away when you are studying so that you're just devoting your time to studying. You're not checking your phone. You're not distracted by the TV. There are these really good app blockers that you can get now on your phone, which will basically restrict you from going on social media or getting notifications during certain times. So if you feel like you're easily distracted by that, that's something you definitely want to look into. And then have a plan for the time. So if I know I'm going to be studying for 4 hours, I'm going to have a plan going into that time so I can make sure it's going to be a productive time. So think about, what do I need to study? What do I need to practice during this time? And what can I prepare for my next study session? So if I was preparing for natural science and reading one day, I know I'm going to read from my study guide. I know I want to watch a couple videos. Then I'm going to do some practice questions and prepare for my next study session so that you're not wasting those 4 hours trying to figure out what to do. If you need help setting goals for yourself or creating a study schedule, we do have academic success coaches in the Tutoring and Testing Center. You schedule an appointment through Navigate, so the same way you make a tutoring appointment. And they can kind of help you with getting organized, creating those goals. If you need to actually block off time in your weekly schedule, because I know you're balancing a lot, having someone outside to kind of map everything out would be a good way to make sure you're staying on track. Before I go over some of these study strategies, Jessie, do you have any like study tips, general study tips that you would recommend?
So one from the top of my head, before I started studying at all, I just did a little diagnostic practice test for the OAT just to get a general idea of what sections I was weakest on so that I could devote most of my time to studying. Mainly because when I started studying, and I should have given myself more time. It was 4 months before my first attempt. So, but I did a diagnostic test, and just doing a practice test before studying is a really good way of just figuring out which sections you're not as confident in and you're not doing too well in, and then you could go from there in doing a lot more practice questions for those. So, every day, just trying to fit in at least like a short little warm up or a couple practice questions of from like each section, just really helps, because at least like you kind of get that mentality, you get that habit of, I can fit in just a little bit of practice in my day, even if it's a jam-packed day of classes or extracurriculars. Just doing a little warm-up of couple of questions helps you just squeeze in a little bit of practice in the day. So, yeah.
All right, so some more recommendations. When you are doing practice questions, make sure you're timing yourself, especially when it comes to the reading comprehension section, because that time will go by quickly, especially if you're spending too long on the passage and then you get to the 16 questions and realize, oh, I have to read all these as well. So make sure you're timing yourself. Find a study partner or group. If you don't work well in a study group, maybe just find someone that can keep you accountable. So someone that will text you once a week and just follow up. When you do have downtime, like Jessie mentioned, make sure you're doing practice questions. So before class starts, on your lunch break, if you ride the shuttle, just bring flashcards or open up your app to do some quick study questions. And then at the start of every study session, try to quickly review what you did last section to keep that material fresh, especially if you worked on learning a new concept. So you just want to make sure you're referring back to it again and again and again. Capitalize on your learning style. So if you are a visual learner, make sure you're looking up or drawing out things so that you can find like the picture in your mind that will make it concrete in your mind. If you're an auditory learner, Find some videos or some lectures you can listen to really make sure you understand the concepts. If you're reading, writing, make sure you look back at your old notes from class, or you're reading the study guide and taking your own notes as you go along. If you're kinesthetic, maybe find a study partner to do flashcards with, or make a practice exam or Quizlet, one of those where you can really engage in the material. And then it's all about really just frequent quizzing, going again and again to the material. Most students spend about 3 to 6 months preparing for these exams. So depending on when you want to take it, if you're taking it this summer, this is a really good time to get started. As you are preparing for the exam, make sure you're taking care of yourself, that you're taking study breaks, you're not getting burnout, that you are getting enough sleep, because sleep is so important for memory and retention, that you're relaxing and you're actually recharging, and you're eating well-balanced meals. So Jessie, how did you make self-care part of your test prep routine? Did you?
Yeah, I did. I would do a lot of snacks, honestly. Just in between my breaks of studying, I would just go down, just treat myself to a nice like some Kit Kats, that's my favorite candy, or hang out with my brothers at the time, since I was studying online. Just being able to talk with loved ones just really helps with kind of getting that stress out of you from studying, and spending time just play a couple of games, or talk about something that's happened over the week with somebody. Is just really nice. So that's basically what I did. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, so finding resources. There's a lot of different resources out there. How do you make the decision about what's the best resources for you? So Jessie, can you talk about your thought process when you were deciding what resources to use to prepare for the exam? And can you talk about what were your favorite resources?
Yeah, so I use primarily a plan practice book. And the reason was I was just trying to save a lot of money on just on prepping for the exam, because the exam is not very cheap. So it's a few $100 out of your wallet. So I was just trying to save money. The practice book I got it for around like $80, and the practice book just had it goes through in general like each little part of like biology, like evolution, or translation and transcription, or I don't even remember all the organic chemistry reactions, the aldol or Claisen reactions. And it was very thorough, and it had all the information there, and I could it was all organized too by chapters, and had review questions at the end of each chapter. So as I was saying like earlier, I just went through each chapter in that book, go through it, and then just quiz myself through the review questions at the end of each chapter. And that was my favorite, because honestly it was just the main one that I did. Not the only one, because I did do the DAT boot camp, because they had the warm-up questions of just which is a couple of questions from each section: biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and so on. And that's free as well. I know DAT Bootcamp has a premium subscription thing. I didn't utilize that. After I took the OAT, I found out there's an OAT Bootcamp, which I really wish that I learned about when I was studying, because the OAT Bootcamp has physics, which is it's relevant to me. But OAT Bootcamp and DAT Bootcamp, because I think they're from the same company. They have a warm-up question of 5 questions that you can do. Just squeeze them in any time in your day. And that just really helps me when just going about my day and I just remember, oh, I got to do this, and just kind of do it like while eating or something. And Khan Academy, I used just a little bit to practice some general chemistry stuff, since they did have a couple of little practice questions for balancing reactions or gas laws. But I didn't use that too much. As I said, my Kaplan practice book was my primary resource that I used to study. That was my favorite. It just organized everything very well for me. And the boot camps were just very helpful in squeezing in a couple of practice questions and just testing your knowledge at some point in your day. So that's why.
If you are looking for additional resources, the Tutoring and Testing Center has a lending library. We do have Kaplan and we have the Princeton Review for DAT and OAT. You can check out the study guides for 2 weeks at a time. So let's say you bought the latest edition, but we have the 2019. It's just additional questions that you can go through. Or you can just use this as your initial resource if you're just being introduced to the exam. Okay, so test day, what to expect and how to prepare. So before I go through these items, Jessie, can you just describe what test day was like for you?
Yeah, so going into the testing site, it was just it made me very anxious, and I started getting a lot of testing anxiety. And I knew that before, like the day before, I knew that I would get very nervous and very stressed when going there. So I had my dad drive me to the testing site just so I wouldn't have to worry about finding parking or like making sure I get to the right place, stuff like that. I could utilize that driving time to study a little bit more, just making sure I have the remembering all the equations and all the different things for the test, because physics equations, math equations, there's no formula sheet on the testing software. You have to memorize all of that. So I was just trying to utilize that driving time to memorize everything. And once I got to the exam site, it was pretty short, like pretty quick and thorough. I put all my materials like water, my little study guides in a locker, and they would just pat me down, make sure that I don't have anything that I'm not supposed to, sign a little paper of that like I arrived on time and stuff. And then I sat down on the computer. There was a little not a headphone set, like a headphone muffler, just to if there was other people around me, because it's a testing site, there's multiple people at computers there. If they made any noise, my concentration would be disturbed. So, but it was very smooth, very quick. So after like just arriving there, my testing anxiety just kind of faded away, because I kind of made myself go into this mode of, okay, I gotta get this over with. So, but I recommend, if you are the kind of person that just gets very nervous and feels like you could use some more time in just remembering more of the material that you need for your exam, try to see if you can talk to somebody to help you drive you to the testing site, so you could utilize that time to study a little bit more and not have to worry about parking or anything. But the procedures beforehand is very simple, not too stressful. So yeah.
All right, so if you don't have someone to drive you, make sure you look up the directions, how long it will take to drive there, everything beforehand. Don't wait for the morning of to do that. And then try to arrive early because they have the check-in process. The ID verification, it could have fingerprinting, they might take your photo, they might look at 2 different IDs. So make sure that you know exactly what you need for the exam. And then the exam room, Jesse did a good job describing that there's other people in that room, and most of them have the noise canceling headphones, but you still will see people out of the corner of your eye. So it is kind of a nerve-wracking experience. If you would like to kind of get a similar experience, you can take a practice exam in the tutoring and testing center. You just call us and say you want to take one of your practice exams with us, and we'll put you in the lab just so you can kind of see what it's like with people entering and exiting the room or people sitting next to you. And then highly recommend to prepare for the exam the night before. So what outfit you're going to be wearing, pick out what you're going to eat for breakfast. Try not to make it a stressful morning. Just think of all those things the night before. So the morning of, you're just kind of in a good mindset and you are thinking in a positive nature and not trying to rush around to try to find your keys or your jacket. So with the exam, make sure that you're answering every question, and you can tackle the questions in the order you want. So Jesse mentioned that you can mark the question and come back later. Jesse, is there a clock actually on the screen to help you monitor the time?
Yes, there is a little part, I think in the corner of the screen there, it does show you how much time you have left on the section. I forgot to mention as well, all the questions are multiple choice, and the choices you can click on, so then it can just show you that you have eliminated that choice. So it helps you kind of, if you need to go back to that question, you remember, oh, I did eliminate this choice, because it just gives you that ability to. So.
And then as you are taking the exam, you have usually a notepad or a whiteboard or something where you can actually take notes. So when you are doing like the physics question that Jessie mentioned, how she drew out the momentum, like that's a really good way to kind of have your brain move forward with a question that you're kind of stuck on. So make sure you're utilizing that notepad. So highly recommend to do a diagnostic if it's early in your studies, just so that you can create a study plan that's more based on what you need. And then make sure that you're researching the graduate programs and you know what their expectations are for admission. Each practice exam can give you really insight, not only into the content, but how familiar, like how the questions actually look and the wording of questions. How the test features look on the computer, including how to use the on-screen calculator, or how to pull it up, or how to mark a question to go back to it. So make sure you're doing full-length exams as you study. And then for each practice exam, make sure you're timing yourself, because you don't want to run out of time test day. Mindset is very, very important. So make sure that you're talking positively to yourself, because positive self-talk can really increase your confidence going into test day. So be encouraging with yourself. Jessie, did you do this at all?
I did a little bit, but it was more of talking with another person. So I had a friend who was studying for the MCAT at the same time I was studying for my OAT. So we would talk to each other about how it was very stressful to just be studying and have this huge important exam coming up. But we would talk to each other saying, hey, we're both in the same boat. We got this. We're going to do the best that we can. I feel like definitely having somebody that is somewhat in the same boat as you and being able to talk to each other about the stress that you're feeling kind of gives you that sense of relief that you have somebody that you can talk to and kind of be an outlet for all those negative emotions of, oh, this is too stressful, I can't do it. You have somebody else there with you that can tell you, hey, I'm also doing the same thing, but and I know it's stressful, but I know you can do it. Like maybe we can take a break, or maybe talk about something else. But you know, we all know how difficult it is, but you can have that person that you can talk to.